Hello, it's great to see you again. I'm Emmalina May, a registered quantity surveyor. Every time when I explain to someone about what I do, they're always like, okay, but what is that? And then I realize, you know what? We don't have the movies like the doctors, the police officers, the firefighters, and why we don't have one? And we should have one, because if we don't have one, we're never gonna have kids growing up and thinking of, I would like to become a quantity surveyor. Because if they don't know how they work towards to it. And which is quite interesting that to see most of my students who are currently in the quantity surveyor pathway, they didn't know this job until they actually work in the industry. And indirected to know from someone from somewhere and knowing, you know what, this job is so cool. Why never I heard about this when I grow up? Why no one guide me through to let me know that I actually good for this career? And they regretted it for not knowing this earlier, because they could have enjoyed this much, much longer. And that strikes me about this topic, why we don't have a movie. And I think that the answer is quite clear, because there's not enough of us and is not being recognized and is globally unrecognized well for the professions. And let's come back to the smaller scales in New Zealand. I still have so many people asking me about, I know you are the quantity surveyor, you are the one with the camera on the road. I'm like, no, I'm not. That's a land surveyor. Or they will be like, oh yes, I know, you do the quantities for materials, you do orders. And I'm like, yes, that's part of my job, but that's not all my job. And someone said, oh yeah, I know, you are the accountant for the construction. I'm like, yes, you kind of get the gist, but again, that's not full of my job. And imagine if you don't know what the job is, how would you actually know how the job gonna help you? Think about all the homeowners or all the construction companies, developers, any other ones that involved in the construction industry. If they don't know this role existed, how would they know that they need the help or they needed to be asked someone to help them on a particular problem? And that's where I come in today. Hopefully my talk will inspire you to ask the very same question. Why can't we have a movie? And actually, for some of the countries, they start to have this career embedded in some of the episodes, some soap operas, but it's not been, I want to say, it's not been broadcast enough. It's not been well known. It's not as the astronauts, not as the firefighters, not as the policemen, not as a detective, not as the nurses, not as the doctors, not as the lawyers. Everyone wants to be a lawyer. Or doctors, police officers, because they know what it looks like, because they know the life of their job. But when I search on the search engine about what is quantity survey like, instead of having a very true one answer, I have thousands of different answers because they're not being understood properly. And actually, in different countries, the quantity surveyors are working slightly different. So each country should probably have their own version of movies about what is this career like. And this is not the only career that are being understated. There's lots of other careers as well. So ask yourself, if you are in that one of the careers, asking yourself, why we don't have a movie yet? We need to have something. And when I say movie, it's not has to be movie, but it's a reflection on how there's been unnoticed or unwell known of a job title. Right, so come back to the construction topics and come back to those movie ideas and just think about the power of the media representations. When I say a word of a doctor, what pops in your head? Maybe the scene from Grey's Anatomy, or maybe The Good Doctors, right? What about astronaut? You're probably thinking about Interstellar or Martian, right? Pretty cool. Media has an incredible powers to shape the perspective, and it tells people what a profession is about. Well, some of the exaggerating part or some dramas, but that's just part of the movie. But you get the gist of what actually included in it. And you also understand the challenges. And when you're a kid, you'll be like, okay, to become a chemistry lab worker will be quite fun because I get to know all of those details. Or become an astronaut is what I really want because I like to build things together. But it allows you to have those options to think through. So if that is not part of your option, how would you know, right? Okay, so most people have no ideas about quantity surveyors does, and that troubles me quite a lot. And thankfully, it has been noticed, and especially in New Zealand, compared to when I start to study quantity surveyors. And now that I have more and more people join into this, and I can hear lots of people to say, "Oh, I know what you do. I know exactly what you do," and I'm like, "Oh, thank God, I don't have to explain again." And the movie series could educate the public and highlight how dynamic and impactful of this career. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't know it is part of your options, you never would consider it to be part of your pathways. And it's not just about counting bricks or budgets. It's about problem solving, managing risks, and navigating complex contracts, and even saving the entire projects from failure. All right, earlier I talked about kind of why we need a movie for QSs, but I still want to highlight a few points here. So first, when I tell people about what is quantity surveyors, I always don't get the straight answer and they don't understand this properly. And this will create a misunderstanding even before I start to do anything about my job. And then once I explain to them, they always will be very surprised of how much a QS can do and how much influence a QS can do to their projects. So the first thing that I believe why we should have a movie will be, so we can mention about this challenge. Everyone can know about it. Because think about the high-stake projects where QAs must juggle tight budgets, last-minute design changes, and complex negotiations. That will be a very, very good drama, right? And then imagine the QS is uncovering a major contract issues that could have company millions that saved. This sounds like a plot just for a very, very good legal thriller. So there's definitely some juice in the day in, day out of QS's job. And also for the behind the scene heroes, QS is doing lots of behind the scene jobs during the day in, day out. And I always say that when you know a project is running so smooth, that means a QS has worked their ass off and to make this thing work. And nobody will notice because the job is going very smooth. And when you know that a job hit a fan, and the first reaction they will ask the QS, because everything when it's wrong is about the financial part that getting the most reflected. And of course the time, which is the time delays, disruptions. But in QS world, I always say time is money, which means it will come back to the money side as well. So every time when theirs goes wrong, the first thing that they will think about is, oh, wait, let's ask the QS why it went wrong. Why it costs more? Why there's a variation? Why there's a dispute? Why there's an EOT? And so on and so on. So all of those things happened and they will ask the QS for if they did it wrong. But if the things goes right, it's never been detected. So I'll refer them as a behind the scene heroes. They're kind of like the mastermind behind everything. So QSs are the glue to hold the project together. I refer them as a data center because they know everything before the project starts and they know everything after the project physically finished. And in fact, most of the defect liability period is 12 months. A QS need to be known after what happened at least a year of the project finished physically. So there's lots of data in their head and in their filing system. And if you ask a QS, you have an answer. Without the QSs, skyscrapers, bridges, and hospitals wouldn't come to life or would cost more to come to life. And definitely the human stories about QSs, because every single QSs are quite unique. And you find they have their own ways to work through their challenges, but they always having the way that to navigating disputes, to help small contractors to survive for unfair contracts or arguments, and also at the same time to save the relationships that have been built carefully throughout the time. And that's so much emotions and humanities that a QS can do. So here's my versions of the QS movies in my head for the main character part. It could be a passionate QS work for a very high-profile project, balancing tight deadlines, budget conflicts, and a complex of stakeholders. And then there will be some plot twists, of course. They discover such as a major flaw in the contract that could sink the project or save it, depending purely on how the QSs could handle this. And for the human elements, of course. Along the way, the mentor and the junior QS may establish a very good relationships, and the mentor has been mentoring the junior, and junior take on a bigger career pathway, and this will be throughout the process will be a personal struggles and family struggles, work-life balance, and some moral dilemmas, because we deal with that every single day. So I think the movie could like a little bit mix of the pursuit of happiness for the determination side of things, and maybe Suits for the clever side of negotiation for the contract clauses, and Mission Impossible for the high stake of dramas. What do you think? And I think that will be a very, very cool movie, right? So if any movie producers, you're watching this, I just give you the idea. And why this movie is meta, and why I really need someone to actually think about, actually, let's do some movies for the professions that is not being recognized either correctly or being recognized enough, right? So a movie or a show about QSs, again, I said it doesn't have to be a movie. It can be episodes, TV shows, reality shows, any shows. But it's just to show more about what we're doing. And all of those shows will be not about entertainment, but more for the education, for the public. It helps the people to understand what we do and why it's vital. And also inspire some new talents. Again, like I said earlier, if the kids watching the movies or teenagers and they're watching the movies and episodes and dramas, whatever, and they found out actually this job is so cool and this fits everything I want it to be, and I want to do this in my future, there you go. And you inspire more people to come into this industry. And the more people come into the industry, and that's how you help the industry improve. Show the world that the QSs are innovative, strategic, and indispensable of the construction. All right. So what do you think QS movie could look like? And again, this doesn't have to be just for QSs. For every single career that has been under-recognized. And I mean, for example, we actually have lots of shows about architects, which I'm quite jealous. And we have shows about engineering. I really enjoy those ones. But I don't hear enough about, for example, health and safety managers or some other like quality assurance, right? So all of this is just in the construction industry. And let's think about something outside of the construction industry. And I'm sure there are so many of the professions is not being recognized properly, and they need to. All right. So share your version. What do you think of the movies can looks like in the comment box, or send me an email. Thank you so much for spending the time with me, and I hope you enjoy the talk and also feeling inspired. And I do hope in the very near future I can see the movie come to life. All right, see you in the next time.